Well, welcome everyone to our ACDC coaching webinar. I'm Caitlin Ziegler, Director at GRIST and your MC for today. Now, joining me today is my Senior Behavioural Analyst, Kate Golby, as always. She's going to lead the discussion, but we also have a special guest, real life master coach and leader who we'll introduce to you in just a little while. Now, give me 1 second. I'm just lost my notes. There we go. Now at GRIST, I want to tell you a little bit about us before we jump into what we're going to be talking about today. So at GRIST, we develop and use a micro-behavioural conversation frameworks, a bit like your coaching conversation frameworks or your sales and service conversation frameworks. And we use these in a way to help leaders pinpoint what they could do differently and how they can get insights and how to achieve better outcomes from their conversations. Now, Kate is very familiar with our coaching conversations. She has assessed an enormous amount of coaching conversations over the years. What we also find is that coaching is one of the most crucial things that you can do as a leader when we're talking about things that really make a difference to your team and to your people. Now, for those of you who haven't joined us before, what we'll be doing a little bit of housekeeping as before we go through. Now, you'll see on your screen in a second, we will be taking some questions and answers from anyone who's on the call today. Please just use the Q&A button or the chat function, whichever you prefer, and we will monitor that throughout the session so we can jump into some questions at the end. Now, and feel free to ask any of us, that's Tegan, Kate or myself. Now, a little bit about today's webinar. So first, at GRIST, what we do here is really simplify change and inspire learning so people and organisations thrive. We really believe that conversations are the lifeblood of an organisation and that small, simple changes made frequently can deliver really big results, and that leaders are the single biggest influence on people and performance. And what is fundamental, as I just said before, is that those conversations that leaders have frequently and the conversations that really impact performance, we're really talking about coaching. Now, if you're here today, chances are you're already bought into that coaching is really important, but also you might be one of those leaders who are struggling to find the time to do it, or you might be struggling to get your people to really prioritise coaching. So today's conversation is really all about that, how leaders can have better, shorter conversations that really do drive that productivity and performance while enhancing employee engagement. Now, I'm going to hand over to Kate in a second to lead our Q&A, but first a little bit more about our special guest. So we have Master Coach, Senior Leader and all-round superstar Tegan Judge from NIB here today. Tegan has had more than a decade of experience in customer service and the contact centre industry, and she's a transformational leader. She's heavily invested in the success of her people and is a really generous leader who's really focused on developing others through coaching, mentoring and support. Tegan is energetic, she's passionate, she's a force of nature and an innovative problem solver, which I've seen firsthand through many of her leadership programs and some of her transformational projects that she's run in NIB. And she really influences and inspires everyone around her. She gives back to the industry, she participates in industry events, she supports excellence programs and celebrates lots of success of her peers, colleagues and staff, and is a huge advocate for coaching. So let's get into it. I should say too, Tegan is a senior leader and she has 5 performance leads under her and 60 consultants at NIB. So a really big team that Tegan is looking after, and coaching is a really crucial part of that. So let's get into it. Over to you, Kate, and Tegan, lead us away on discussion.
Thanks, Caitlin. Yes, so like Caitlin said, I have listened to hundreds, probably thousands of coaching conversations, and what I guess the thing that I hear the most from leaders that I've worked with is that they're constantly expressing, really great intentions to coach. Like, people really want to coach, but that often we find is getting derailed by a lack of time. And the biggest complaint that we hear is that they feel that there's really not so much time in their schedule to allow for coaching in the workplace. So we know that, the pressures of management can be, overwhelming. The phone's ringing, people are constantly dropping by to ask questions. And that's, before you get to your inbox and your overflowing diary and constant meetings and all of that, we get it. And so even though we know that coaching the team, gets them more engaged and makes them more productive, adding just that one more thing to the day and to the week just feels like quite daunting, really. But what we've found is that there's a real misconception, I suppose, with that coaching your team, your direct reports, has to be a really scheduled, sit down, lengthy, in-depth meeting. And I'm here to tell you that the good news is that it really doesn't. So Tegan, you're our expert master coach for the day. And so for people and coaches specifically struggling to make time for coaching, and they're really finding that their schedule's not allowing for it, then maybe that's mean that it's dropped out of their rhythm, their weekly sort of process. What would you suggest to get them back into that regular rhythm of coaching?
Yeah, okay. Look, Kate, I know all too well that we often don't get the time to have those full coaching sessions, and sometimes it's other priorities that actually take over the session. So you're still holding it, but you might have lots of business changes or behavioral issues that you need to address with consultants. So implementing coaching on the go can give you greater flexibility in the way that you manage your team's performance, and it even allows you to then be able to squeeze in sessions between those existing meetings that you might have. If your business is in a surge period or your people sessions have been reduced or removed, coaching on the go enables you to ensure that all of your people are still feeling valued by having that time with you or with their leader. And all it takes is a few minutes between interactions to provide that feedback. So you're able to then discuss the opportunities and really target key performance areas quickly and effectively without having to, sacrifice those service levels or delay service being provided to customers.
Yeah, right. So I get how that sort of greater flexibility really helps, our coaches with their time management, I suppose. But the benefit also is, helping their team just feel valued and heard, I suppose, and seen. What other benefits to this type of coaching have you come across?
Yes, certainly. Look, the biggest benefit that we see is that immediate improvement. So being able to sit side by side and observe somebody in real time, you're able to pause and reflect, but you're also able to provide that feedback and insight to the consultant so that they can implement it immediately. If time allows, you can then continue to listen and observe and actually see them putting it into action on their next interaction with a customer. And this really allows them to show not only how they can have an immediate improvement, but it helps provide them with more confidence as well. Being able to give them the time to go in and give it a go straight away and be able to see those benefits in real time is a huge benefit.
Absolutely. And so from what you've just described there, that style of coaching, the shorter sessions, it sounds like you're not necessarily trying to cram a 30-minute session down into 5 minutes, right? So it's a slightly different approach. Is that right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So, our business, as I'm sure, many others have been experiencing, a huge surge in volume and a number of other challenges that really impact the time we have available to be able to dedicate to that coaching and development. So this has meant we've really had to adapt our coaching style to suit. And while we do still stick to the same principles of the standard coaching, we have a much more targeted approach. We lead the consultants to the opportunities faster than we would in a standard sort of 30-minute session. We still look at the current state. We talk about the impacts in the desired state. And then depending on what the micro behavior is that we're targeting, and assessing also the level of competency of the consultant you're with, we'll often put the practice into place on the next call. So it really is, just a condensed version, that short, sharp, let's look at the opportunity, what are the impacts of what you're currently doing, how can we do it differently, and then let's go and give it a go. And we found that by completing a number of these short, sharp sessions, we're able to increase that rate of change without then impacting service. So instead of having that one long session, in our business, they're 2 weeks apart, we're able to have several smaller sessions over that same time period. And that actually increases the touch points we have with our team, and it increases the amount of feedback that they're getting. Often with that traditional session, you're looking at one micro behavior and then you're giving them 2 weeks to go away and implement it. With this option, you can have 2 or 3 really short, sharp sessions, and they've implemented the micro behavior and they're demonstrating it well. That then enables you to move on and start to tackle the next micro behavior. Now, a really good example of this that we see in our business a lot is looking at that engagement part of the conversation with a customer, particularly for new team members. So often you'll find as soon as someone hits the floor, they're missing a large number of those, key micro behaviors from that first section of the call. And we find we're actually able to tackle several of them over that 2-week period, instead of just looking at one and waiting for the next 2 weeks, sort of 30-minute session. And we're not taking, any more time with them than we normally would have. We're just doing it more often and more frequently. And that's speeding up their competency significantly.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're sort of, you're picking up these, maybe little behaviors that need tweaking before they become a habit, I suppose, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, great. And so, by touching base on these shorter sessions, that's happening more often, you're getting greater speed to competency. What other benefits are we sort of seeing for both of you guys as coaches and for the team?
Yeah, look, we're seeing lots of benefits. The team are really enjoying spending more time with their leader, seeing their leader more often. They know they've got their scheduled sessions, but being able to have their leader drop in with them, is something that they really value. And I've found my team, who often work, most of their work is done remotely. They're more in tune with their team and their team's performance. And they're also more in tune with our customers. They're hearing more of what's happening. They're seeing more of what's going on, that they've really got a good understanding of what the opportunities, not just for our team, but for our business are. And I've found my leaders are also more productive because they can multitask while they do some of this. And now we're actually starting to see our consultants reaching out and asking for this time. They'll often reach out and message their leader and say, can I have some observation time today? And this really gives them the opportunity to do a couple of things. One is, showcase what they're doing really well. If they want to get a bit of a pat on the back from their leader, or, make their leader proud and show them how much improvement they've made, they can do that. And they also take this as an opportunity to workshop something that they're struggling with. And what that's showing me is that by doing this coaching on the go, we're actually increasing our engagement levels and our accountability across our teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like how you use that example of having a mostly remote team. I'm sure that's becoming a little less common than it has the last few years, but I'm sure that there's still so many coaches with a lot of their team that aren't physically in an office with them. And so both with a remote team and a in-person team, do you have any other tips for coaches on how they can approach this style of coaching to make best use of the time?
Yeah, certainly. So one of the things my team find really effective is to actually schedule in time with each of their team to observe them. And that can be done in person or remotely, in the office or in a retail environment, just setting aside time in your day that this is the time I'm going to stop and listen to you and give you my full attention. And what I've found for the leaders is that, this can give them the opportunity to either do this as a dedicated focus or a split focus. So often they'll either drop into a Zoom session or they'll sit side by side in the office and listen in. And sometimes they'll actually observe a few calls before they even say anything. And it kind of enables them to continue on with light tasks in the background so that they're still remaining productive. But if they see or hear something that interests them, they're then able to stop what they're doing and provide that short, sharp coaching session in between the interactions. And we find this is extremely effective for picking up trends and to be more impactful than just listening to one call and then holding a coaching session straight after, because you're getting a lot more feedback over that time period. You're still working away in the background, but the interaction time you're having with your consultant or your team member is short and sharp and to the point, and enables them to, to keep going and not stop that flow of customers. Having that time to compare a few calls together really has its benefits. but also then, you know, sticking around to hear the consultant attempt to apply the coaching on a few interactions is really beneficial as well. You're able to then provide, you know, additional support and guidance after each attempt. And that's where you'll really start to see an increase in the speed of uplift. This approach also helps the team get used to coaching on the go. So if you've not done it before and you know, you're not used to just trying to provide that feedback and improvement in a couple of minutes, sitting side by side with somebody for, you know, half an hour or an hour and hearing a few interactions and then dropping a little piece in between. And you may just start with positive reinforcement to start with, you know, oh, I really loved the way you did that on the call, and then wait for the next one. Oh, you know, that was even better. Well done. And then on the third call, it might be, okay, well, you know, did you notice when the customer said this? You know, what do you think caused that? And you're able to sort of introduce it in a soft approach to get your team used to it. You know, they'll start to see the benefits of that immediate feedback, especially when they're trying something new as well. Having you there by their side while they give it a go for support and encouragement can be really beneficial.
Absolutely. And I think, yeah, I think it's really, it was a really great tip, I think, the multitasking element of it, because often you are just listening out for a specific behavior or maybe just a particular part of a conversation or a task that team member's doing. And the rest of it, you don't necessarily need to be paying so much attention to. So to have your other tasks going at the same time, it really is combating, I suppose, that the time poor element of, you know, most leaders. You know, they can kind of do two things at the same time and then jump in and get that most effective coaching done when they need to. Absolutely.
Yeah. Definitely. And I think a lot of my leaders, you know, we all started working remotely in 2020 and we haven't gone back. It was something they did without thinking in the office, and you always overheard people on the floor and you would be able to interject or, you know, provide a little bit of feedback. You know, they'd go into after call work or they'd have a pause or go into a break, and you'd be able to have that quick session. And then with COVID and everybody working remotely, it's something that sort of dropped off. So being able to re-implement this has really been beneficial for us. And then when we are in the office, it's more natural for it to continue as well. So yeah, definitely a good benefit.
Excellent. And I really love the other point that you made a little bit earlier of how you're finding that it really is bonding your team who maybe aren't seeing each other every day because they're working from home a lot of the time. This is something that's giving them that regular contact with their leaders and their team members and creating a little bit more of that camaraderie, I suppose, that has possibly dropped off in the last few years.
Yeah, and it's a good opportunity if you do have a remote team to share some of that positive feedback in your group chats and your team platforms as well. So you might be giving that one-on-one feedback to them sitting next to them, but you're then able to share those moments in the group chat to encourage the rest of the team as well. You know, I heard so-and-so doing an amazing introduction. You know, next time you're chatting with them, get them to share it with you. And it's just encouraging everybody to get more involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, creating that culture of, you know, of support and sharing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Caitlin, have we had any questions come through?
Now, I'm not seeing many questions in the chat, so please put some questions in the chat if you do have any for Tegan or Kate or myself. I do have a few that were sent in earlier though, so I can grab a couple of extra questions, but I just want to summarise a little bit of what you said, Tegan, because I think there's some really, as you've pointed out too, Kate, some really nice points about how Coaching the Go actually is actioned. And like you said, it's not the squashing a huge coaching conversation into 5 minutes. It's about how do I make that 5-minute conversation short, sharp, and to the point, which means sort of shrinking everything in a way. It's how I sort of interpret that. It's smaller things that I'm concentrating on, that observation which is more immediate, and the feedback which is also immediate, that I'm practicing and giving feedback in the moment. And that's what makes that sort of coaching on the go so effective, is those sort of short, sharp, and I'm making little tiny steps and progressing each day, even daily. That I can see how that would work as a daily cadence for that. Thank you, Tegan, for those insights. I do have a question for you, and that is, you've mentioned a few crucial behaviours there, and one of them was observation, and how important observation is for leaders to then really have that effective coaching conversation. I'd love to hear what other favourite coaching tips you have, or bits in the moment about what is it in that coaching conversation that is really effective that you love to use in that coaching on the go scenario.
Yeah, look, this sort of applies to coaching on the go and your standard coaching, but I guess my favourite thing is always, you know, we call it that light bulb moment, or asking a question somebody doesn't know the answer to get them to identify what it is they've missed. And this can be really effective in that short, sharp session. Whereas, you know, in our longer sessions, we tend to ask a lot of questions to help them identify, you know, what was missing and what the impacts of that might be, how it affected the customer and how they might be feeling. By finding that one question that they don't know the answer to, which highlights to them the thing they didn't do during the interaction, you know, is my favorite thing to use, and I find it really effective. And it really, you can almost see that light bulb turn on above their head. You know, wow, I get it. That's why the call went down that path, or that's why the customer, you know, reacted the way they did, because I didn't, or, you know, the way I did this wasn't the right way.
That's a lovely insight. And I'd love to ask you another question on top of that, Tegan. If you're thinking about that as a coach preparing for your coaching, how do you come up with that one question? What do you do to prepare for that?
If it's like in the moment, it can be a little bit harder. But when I do my longer sessions, I always sort of prepare my notes, and I think really hard about the questions that I'm going to ask. And it is about that working backwards. It's okay, well, what was it that was missing? You know, what did I determine that really made the biggest impact on the call? And then working backwards from there to try to understand, well, what question is it that I can ask to get the consultant to answer without giving the answer away, but really leading them towards it. So yeah, it's about sort of reverse engineering. And when I listen to a recorded session, or if I'm doing an observation live, I take a lot of notes and I write down the things they're saying. And I just take it one step from then and go, all right, well, what questions am I now going to ask? And what's that one question that's really going to get them to, you know, to give me the answer I'm looking for? And you just start to work backwards from there.
Yeah, I love that. It's a really lovely insight. And I think, and you're right, while a contact center is one environment where you've got access to a lot of data there about what that conversation sounds like, I can see how that would work in lots of scenarios, whether it's listening into that sort of stakeholder conversation or in the retail environment on the floor, just gathering that evidence and data that you can bring back into the conversation. I think, yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
Nice. Kate, I've got a question for you as well. As I mentioned before, you've assessed many, many thousands of coaching conversations. What are you always surprised about that more leaders could be doing but aren't doing?
Yeah, I think look, there's probably two. And the first one does come a little bit back to what Tegan was saying there. It's about drawing it back to the outcome and what's happened. So discussing that link. So talking about the behavior and what it could, what did happen, what it did lead to, or what it could lead to with some tweaking, with some changing, and just constantly making that team member aware of why, I suppose, the change is necessary. So constantly drawing this is, if you do this what could happen, and making it really clear, that drawing those links to the team member's mind. And the other one would be probably just getting a team member's buy-in, and making sure they're on board with I guess the coaching in general, but also that specific area of targeting that you as a coach are trying to get them on board with. So I think having a team member on board, not only sort of, I guess, you gauge by asking that buy-in, you sort of gauge their enthusiasm with the area of focus, and maybe then you need to pivot, or you need to go back and rework why that behavior is sort of the reason that you would like to focus on it. But also it kind of really engenders them to want to make the change. Once you kind of get them to go, yeah, okay, I think we should work on it, it's really them becoming a stakeholder in their improvement, I suppose. And hopefully that means that they will kind of work on it with more enthusiasm, with more commitment post the session.
Yeah, oh, that's a nice way of putting it, Kate. Stakeholder in their own improvement. I think that's, if you could all take something away from that. Great. Now, we do have a question in the chat, and it's from Tara. Thank you, Tara. And it's for Tegan. In the moment sessions, do you provide any notes or feedback in writing to the team members, or is it all just verbal and around the conversations, and you just keep the notes for your deeper coaching conversations?
Yeah, look, that's a really great question. I think it really comes down to the individual. Most of our on-the-go sessions, we wouldn't need to provide those notes. If the consultant particularly requests them, then of course we would. We'd take the time to be able to provide that to them. But generally, you're focusing on something that's quite small. So providing a large amount of written information afterwards isn't always as of much benefit. You're really just wanting to take that time with them to get them to understand what it is they're trying to do, to give it a go, and then give them a little bit more feedback again once they've implemented it. Oh, well done. Next time try it a little bit like this, or next time try to say it that way. And because they're able to see that improvement straight away and they're getting that practice in immediately, I often find that that follow-up isn't as necessary as what it is in a longer session. But definitely just tailor it to suit your individual. If you find some people need that in writing to be able to reflect on it later and really take it in, if you have an individual like that, then I'd recommend doing it, or if they're specifically asking for it.
Yeah, that's nice. I think it comes back to, you've got to adapt your coaching all the time, don't you, to each person? I think that it makes a lot of sense that you adapt how many notes you take there too. I would say that what I've seen in a few organisations when they're taking this sort of on-the-go approach, and Tegan, I know you've done it at NIB as well, sometimes having those little ways of just recording what I'm doing as I'm implementing something new, if it's something small and simple, might be even as simple as just noting down on a post-it how many times I've demonstrated the behaviour I'm working on. That's a really nice way of capturing or recording that measurement without a lot of time and effort going into writing really copious amounts of notes. So it can be a really quick check off too, if it's something visual that a leader can come past and see.
Yeah, definitely. One of the other things we actually do, and one of my leaders reminded me of this today, is that we can listen remotely without our consultants knowing. So sometimes you've had that coaching on the go session, you just want to check in later on in the day to see if it's had that impact and it's working. We might just dial into a call and have a listen, and then shoot them a message on Workplace to say, hey, I just listened to you, giving that a go, well done, and just providing that little bit of a follow-up that way.
Yeah, follow up as crucial as preparation, I feel, for coaching. Absolutely. Yes. Not always about the coaching in the moment, the other bits are outside as well.
Yeah.
Well, if we don't have any more questions, I want to say a huge thank you to Tegan for jumping on today and giving us some insights as a master coach and as a leader of leaders who has not just her own people to coach, but also coaches who are coaching. So thank you for those insights, and from NIB's perspective. Thank you, Kate, as always, as our Q&A expert and senior behavioural analyst. I do want to touch on a little bit around, again, thinking about coaching and some tips that can help make coaching a little bit easier for you. I want to touch on a couple of things that we do at Grist. And one of it is our ACDC coaching model. Now, our ACDC coaching model, or tactical leadership model, because it can be used for more than just coaching, it's also for any leadership conversation. This is one way that you can kind of implement a coaching structure, I guess, that still allows you to be your own coach and do your coaching the way that you feel comfortable doing it. So there's 4 phases there. Under each phase, we have a set of 5 micro behaviours. Now, you would have heard Tegan mention micro behaviours before. That's something we're very big on at Grist. And really, micro behaviours are just teeny tiny behaviours. But importantly, they are things that you can see someone do or say. There's something that you can really observe in action. And there's something that's in 100% control of the individual. And then one step further from just being in control and something that you can see someone do, what is really crucial about picking a good micro behaviour to coach on, or what good micro behaviours for coaching are, is that they're predictive of outcome. And what we mean by predictive of outcome is that they are little things that are actually going to make a big difference if they are aggregated together. So if we're thinking about what sort of difference a micro behaviour could make in a sales conversation, it's that asking for the sale we know is really crucial to then it greatly improves your likelihood of getting that sale across the line. So similar to those sorts of micro behaviours that you can coach on, we have coaching micro behaviours that are predictive of getting the most out of your coaching conversation and the most out of most likely to drive behavioural change with your people. So that's our ACDC tactical leadership model in a nutshell. We also have a coaching program called The Gist. Now, The Gist, for some of you on the call, you will have seen this already because you will already be on our Gist platform, which is our online ACDC platform for how you can learn how to do ACDC coaching and put it into action into your coaching every day. So the gist is, as I said, online coaching. It takes you through the micro behaviours of AC/DC in short, sharp, funny videos. We do have Kenny, aka Shane Jacobson, who jumps on and helps you through those coaching behaviours and teaches you how to do them. And then crucially, after you've learnt what the model really looks like and what it sounds like, you can also jump into real life assessments. So a key part of the AC/DC Online or the GIST platform is that you can actually track your own coaching and start assessing what you're doing in your coaching conversation and how effective it is with the people that you're coaching. So we have a self-assessment component, which takes this from not just online learning that you tick and flick, but actually then go and apply in real life. So that's a little 2-minute overview of our GIST platform and the AC/DC coaching model. We will finish up there, but I do want to just say that if you do have any other questions about what we've spoken about today, or the GIST methodology or the GIST platform, we would really love to hear from you. So please jump on and contact us and let us know if you're interested in hearing more. If you do want to dig deeper into some of our past coaching webinars, we've got some similar Q&A, and we also go through the AC/DC model in a little bit more detail. You can jump onto that events section of our website where you may have registered for this webinar, and you can watch any of our past webinars for free. They're all up there for you to access if you'd like to jump on and see some of the other AC/DC conversations we've had and tips and tricks from other master coaches. You can also subscribe. We have a monthly email. We have our LinkedIn page that you can jump on and learn a little bit more about what we do. It's all out there for you to enjoy. So finally, on behalf of GIST, I'd like to thank all of you for jumping on today and bearing with us, and through my technical difficulties early, but also for enjoying and being part of the conversation today. Again, a big thank you to Tegan and to NIB for jumping on and being our master coach for today. And thank you to Kate again for leading that discussion. Thank you all, and I hope to see you next time for our next AC/DC coaching webinar.